Welcome back to Chess Tactic today, everyone. Round 3 of the Grand Swiss delivers a crowd pleaser. Marc'Andria Maurizzi versus Vladislav Artemiev. This is a calm Nimzo-Indian setup. Maurizzi springs a fearless exchange sacrifice that blasts open Black's king and flips the game on its head. He then bags the queen and keeps the initiative, hounding the king across the board with relentless checks. With mate looming and no safe haven in sight, Artemiev resigns, a sparkling statement win for the young French star. And we're off! Maurizzi, with the white pieces, opens with pawn to queen 4, a classic, solid start, aiming to control the center from the get-go. Artemiev responds with knight to king's bishop 6. This is one of the most popular and flexible replies, preparing to challenge white's central control. White plays pawn to queen's bishop 4. This is the queen's gambit setup, putting more pressure on the center and opening lines for the queen. Black responds with pawn to king 6. This move solidifies the center and prepares to develop the kingside bishop. We are heading into very common but very rich opening territory. Knight to queen's bishop 3. White develops a piece, controls the d5 square, and keeps the pressure on. A very natural move. And there it is, bishop to queen's knight 5. Artemiev declares his intentions. We are in a Nimzo-Indian Defense, one of the most respected openings in all of chess. An interesting choice from Maurizzi. Pawn to king's knight 3. This is the Romanician variation, preparing to fianchetto the king's bishop to g2, where it will exert long-range pressure. Black immediately strikes back in the center with pawn to queen's bishop 5. Artemiev is not going to sit back and wait. He's challenging white's control right away. Knight to king's bishop 3. A standard developing move, preparing to castle and bringing another piece into the fight for the center. Artemiev castles kingside. A very wise move, getting his king to safety early in this sharp position. White follows through on the plan with bishop to king's knight 2. That bishop is now a monster, staring down the long diagonal. Black resolves the central tension. Pawn takes pawn on d4. This clarifies the pawn structure and opens the c-file. White recaptures, knight takes pawn on d4. The white knight lands on a beautiful central square. And black continues to challenge the center with pawn to queen 5. This is a very principled approach by Artemiev. White takes again, pawn takes pawn on d5. This creates an isolated queen's pawn position for black, which can be a strength or a weakness. Black recaptures with a pawn, pawn takes pawn on d5. So now we have the classic isolated pawn on d5. Black gets active pieces, but that pawn can become a target later on. Maurizzi castles kingside. Both kings are now safe, and the real middle game battle is about to begin. Knight to queen's bishop 6. Black develops another piece and puts more pressure on white's central knight on d4. White plays bishop to king's bishop 4. A great developing move, putting pressure on black's d5 pawn and preparing to control key squares. Rook to king 8. Artemiev brings his rook to the semi-open e-file, lining it up against white's king and adding support to the center. Knight from queen's bishop 3 to queen's knight 5. An aggressive jump. White is eyeing the weak d6 square and creating immediate problems for black. Artemiev decides to trade knights. Knight takes knight on d4. This simplifies the position slightly, but white's queen will now become very active. And queen takes knight on d4. The white queen enters the game sitting powerfully in the center of the board. Bishop to queen's knight 5. A useful retreat, getting the bishop out of harm's way and keeping an eye on the white position. Rook to queen's bishop 1. White improves the rook, placing it on the open c-file where it can create threats. A bold move. Rook takes pawn on e2. Artemiev grabs a pawn, but this allows white's pieces to become extremely active. Is it worth it? Knight to queen's bishop 7. A fantastic reply from Maurizzi. This knight fork attacks the rook on d8 and the bishop on a8, but its real purpose is to disrupt black's coordination. Black has to respond. Bishop takes knight on c7. This gives up the bishop pair, but it was forced. Rook takes bishop on c7. White's rook now dominates the 7th rank. The position is balanced on a knife's edge. Oh, what is this? Pawn to king's knight 5. This is a shocking move, a massive blunder from a player of Artemiev's caliber. In trying to kick the bishop, he has fatally weakened the light squares around his king. The engine screams, and you can almost feel the ground shift beneath the pieces. Maurizzi calmly plays bishop to king 3. He doesn't need to do anything fancy. Black's position is already collapsing from that self-inflicted wound on g5. And another one! Knight to king's knight 4. This is a catastrophic error, compounding the first blunder. Artemiev completely misses the crushing blow that's coming. Instead of trying to defend, he walks right into the fire. This is a moment of pure tactical blindness. Bang! Rook takes pawn on f7! An absolutely thunderous sacrifice. Maurizzi rips open the black king's position, and there is no coming back from this. What a brilliant, punishing move. King takes rook on f7. Black has no choice but to accept the sacrifice, but his king is now completely exposed in the middle of the board. The attack continues. Bishop takes pawn on d5 with check. Another piece joins the assault, clearing the way for the queen. The king runs. King to king 8. But where can it go? White's pieces are swarming in from all directions. Bishop to king's bishop 7 with check. A beautiful move. This bishop is a hero, luring the black king out even further into the open. King takes bishop on f7. Again, forced. The black king is on a lonely, desperate journey across the board. And now, the cleanup. Queen takes rook on d8. White is now up a massive amount of material, and the attack is still raging. It's all over but the shouting. Knight to king 5. A last-ditch attempt to create some confusion, but it's far too little, far too late. Queen to queen 5, check. Maurizzi is playing with perfect precision, not giving black a single breath. King to king's bishop 6. The king continues its tragic walk, but there is no safe square to be found. Bishop to queen 4. A beautiful, quiet move that sets up a checkmating net. The coordination of the white pieces is just picture perfect. Black tries to block with bishop to king's bishop 5, but this is just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Queen to queen 6, check. The white queen keeps hounding the black king, pushing it closer to the edge. Black interposes with bishop to king 6. A desperate block, but white has a crushing follow-up. And here comes the final pawn break. Pawn to king's bishop 4. This move is designed to tear open the last defensive barrier. Pawn takes pawn on f4. This is the final, fatal mistake. By capturing, Artemiev opens the f-file for white's rook, and this allows a forced checkmate. His only hope was to move the king, but now the end is swift and certain. Rook takes pawn on f4 with a crushing check. The rook that started on a 1 joins the party with devastating effect. The mating net is now complete. King to king's knight 5. The king is forced onto this square, right into the crosshairs. Queen to king 7, check. A relentless pursuit by the white queen. King to king's knight 5. The only move. Queen to king's knight 4, check. Step by step, Maurizzi forces the king towards its doom. King to king's knight 6. There's nowhere left to run. And queen to king's bishop 6, check. That is the final move, as Artemiev resigns. Checkmate is on the very next move. A truly spectacular collapse initiated by one bad pawn move. What a stunning victory for Maurizzi. A complex strategic game was decided in an instant by a series of shocking blunders, which were punished with absolute precision. Thanks for watching Chess Tactic today, and we'll see you for the next one.